Okay. Okay. While Rav Farina is so graciously putting some treats and water on the table, and please feel free in the middle to get up and take what you want. I'd like to get started and tell you just how this is going to work tonight. First, I want to make sure I have a microphone that if people in the back cannot hear, I'll put it on. But if you can, I prefer working without it. You can hear me okay, Marcia? So far, how about now? I can't hear you. More sheets? And you have more? This is just a syllabus. Before I even talk about the sheet, I want to thank the Maltz family for consistently year after year after year, and I mean literally every year except during COVID, opening up their homes for Shiurim, series in winter, Shiurim on Shemitta, other things, and it's truly a pleasure to be in your home once again. I really greatly appreciate that. I have been looking forward to this for 7 years since the last time I did it. I actually kept my notes and added to that during the course of the years as questions came up. I will also tell you that whatever I'm going to say tonight and on Wednesday, Bezrat Hashem, is based on either or and both Rav Yosef Tzvi Rimon's Sefer, which many of you I'm sure either have or have seen, and also on Piskei Halacha from Rav Elisha Aviner, Rav here in Pnei Shmuel. I know that there will be many, many, many questions you're going to have in your minds, right? Can I compost? What do I do with the peels? What happens to the stuff that falls off the table? The wine that's... There can be a lot of questions. And the reason I passed out the syllabus is that between tonight and Wednesday night, I hope to cover all these topics. And chances are 95%, whatever questions you may have now, will be answered during the course of these 2 shiurim. If they are not, obviously feel free to ask. So what I prefer, if it's possible, if you don't understand something I'm saying, tell me. I'll repeat it. But if it's a question about, we're talking about Kedushat Shvi'it, about something, and if you don't know what that means, you'll find out in a few minutes, and you want to know about your compost, please wait. Okay, we'll come to all that, I promise you. Well, I'll try my best. I had mentioned that for some of you I know also join me on Shabbat afternoon when Rav Aviner gives his shiurim on Shemitah. He's been doing it. This is going to be his 12th week in a row. And when I mentioned to him that once again I'm doing the shiurim, he said, "How many are you giving?" So I said 2. So he almost laughed at me. I said, wait, there's a big difference. People who are sitting in front of me don't really, honestly, for tonight, care if there's a machloket, the Rambam and the Ramban, when it comes to the nusach of this Mishnah, which affects the tachlis. That's what this is about. Tell me what to do. That's all I want to know tonight and Wednesday. In addition to that, I also offer during the course of the next year and a half, because it's more than just a year. Shemitah goes into the following year for multiple reasons, which will become self-evident. You always can feel free to message me with questions. If I have the answers, I'll answer them. If not, I'll find you the answers. I will also be happy to send out Rav Aviner's phone number. Not a problem. My goal is that when we're done with the shiurim, besides uploading the shiurim to YouTube, I'm also going to be putting together a WhatsApp group. Whoever wants to join can join, but no one's gonna be able to post in it. And I'll post in there like websites that'll have questions and answers, both in Hebrew and in English, I hope, and charts for certain things you're going to need to know during the course of the year and a half. Okay. One other point, this is just a side point, and I asked Rif Karina if it was okay. Some of you have asked me before tonight if and I'm not doing a book launch tonight. It's 6 of them already. For now, that's enough. But anyone who's interested in purchasing the Piyut book that I wrote, please see me afterwards. I happen to brought a few with me, and at the end of the presentation at 9 o'clock, Bezrat Hashem, I really don't want to go over. We'll daven Mariv, assuming there's a minyan, which I hope there will be. So on the list of the page you got now, you will be receiving before the end tonight a little a few pages. It's going to be either a summary of some of the things I say tonight. It's going to be some more information I'll cover on Wednesday. Some other things that you may not even know you need to know, but I'm going to give that towards the end, okay? As opposed to people flipping through and looking ahead, and it gets confusing when you're reading on page 4, and I'm already still just on page 1 with something. So the list here tells you what I plan to do. Basically, tonight I hope to get through at least up until where it says gardening prior to Shemitah and hopefully gardening during Shemitah. Speaking of that, I'm going to jump ahead for 1 second, because more than one of you today sent me a picture or forwarded me a message that was sent out by the Rabbanim. I assume it's Rav Katz and Rav Nagari, about planting trees. And they said you basically have until the end of next week to plant, and that's it. Yes, but the truth is that the one thing they didn't put in there, and I want to kind of message and just ask why, is that, and I know I'm right now jumping right into the deep end, so I'm going to go back to the beginning in a minute. If you have a tree that has, the roots are completely encased in a ball of dirt, and it's been sitting on the ground or in a nursery on a table that's open on the bottom, and it's considered part of the ground, that you have until either the 15th of Elul or Erev Rosh Hashanah. So you do have a little bit more time. But a tree with just roots, or a tree that has roots then just a little bit of dirt on it, that you have until the end of next week. That's it, 15th of Av. That's it. Okay, that's for fruit trees. Okay, now let's go back to the beginning. I'm going to spend just a few minutes on introduction, but I think it's important. Because of the fact that Shemitah comes only once every 7 years, it requires us to really spend some time and learning and going over the halachot. Because whereas on Shabbat, it's a weekly occurrence and some questions come up perhaps every other week or so, Shemitah, the questions will only come up literally very infrequently. And therefore we have to go through these, the questions. It should not be a source of conflict. Unfortunately, it does. I know it's hard to believe that sometimes Jews disagree about things. Hard. It's very hard to believe.
It's not true.
It's not true. It's Lashon Hara. That's right. I shouldn't even say that. But it should not be a cause of arguments, especially within families, of I hold from this and I don't hold from that. That causes a little bit of strife. As far as nomenclature, the words we use, please never say, oh, it's a problem with Shemitah. Oh, I won't be able to eat that today because it's a problem. No, Shemitah is not a problem. It's an opportunity. It's a mitzvah. According to some, not all, it's a mitzvah to eat what's called Kedushat Shvi'it, which I will define shortly. And like I say, I'm basing my words tonight on both Rav Rimon and Rav Aviner. So, reasons for Shemitah. Why do we even have Shemitah? I'm going to give you just a few brief reasons. This is, by the way, it could be its own shiur, just a hashkafa shiur, but that's not what tonight's about. The Rambam tells us it's to promote ben adam l'chavero, and also it yields, on a physical level, it yields better crops in the future. Anyone who's a farmer will tell you, if they're living in Idaho in the United States, they rotate crops to let the land lay fallow after a period of time in order to let it literally breathe, in order to increase the crops the following year. It also is to ingrain into us the idea that we are not the masters of the world. That's Hashem. It's His world. Hashem haaretz umlo'ah. When a person's relieved of this burden of having to work their fields, they also have more time, free time for Torah, and Rav Kook tells us it has the same effect on Am Yisrael as Shabbat has on the individual. I don't know about you, but I like Shabbat. And it's a day, it's not just a day of rest, it's your mind is clear, it's a different state, you look forward to it. And we should have that same approach when it comes to Shemitah as well. I heard a wonderful line that on the night of Rosh Hashanah, the last Shemitah year, I forgot which community it was here in Israel, the Rav got up on the night of Rosh Hashanah and he said Shabbat Shalom to everybody. It wasn't Shabbat, because this is Shabbat Haaretz. This is known as the Shabbat of the earth. And there are many, many things you could talk about when it comes to that topic. But again, let's get to more tachlis. As far as the Torah is concerned, meaning mi deoraita, there are a handful of things that one is not allowed to do during Shemitah. I'm going to speak in very, very general terms. And those are, wait a minute, you can't water? Just let me get through some of these terms and the ideas, and then I'm going to go back and pick them up in detail. As far as the Torah is concerned, during Shemitah, you cannot plant, you cannot prune in order to stimulate growth, you cannot reap an annual crop, you cannot gather a perennial crop, and there is potentially a mitzvah min Torah to eat food that grows in the ground in the land of Israel during Shemitah, which has Kedushat Shvi'it. Again, I know I keep saying it, but I will define this shortly. Midrabanan. The rabbis instituted a number of things. Imagine that in Hilchot Shabbat, there were only 4 things you couldn't do. Then the rabbis added a whole lot of other things. Well, this is not like that. This is more of, Shabbat we know has 39 major categories of work, and then the derivatives known as toladot. In a sense, we have a similar idea when it comes to Shemitah, so that beyond those things that I told you that the Torah tells us, there are other areas of things we cannot do, or we have to be limited in how we do them. Watering fertilizing, weeding, cutting, and these are all going to be both on the tape. I keep saying tape, that's like 1966. And also on the handouts I'll be giving you, you'll see some of these as well. That's why I'm kind of going through it a little bit fast. Risus, also risus. Spraying, but what's called? It's pesticides. Yeah, thank you. Correct. Thank you. We will see that there are ways to do some of these things. And I'm going to start off now with what's called, I keep saying the term, Kedushat Shvi'it. In very, very general terms, something that grows in the land of Israel, in the soil of the land of Israel, outdoors, fruits and vegetables, depending on when they're picked, and we're going to come to that, generally speaking, have what is called Kedushat Shvi'it. In other words, on Tzom Gedalia, the day after Rosh Hashanah, you have cucumbers growing in your backyard and you pick them, they have now what's called Kedushat Shvi'it. What are the ramifications? What I need to know that for? We'll see. Fruit that will grow in the Shemitah year, not that's growing now, but fruit that will start growing in the Shemitah year, once it is growing and then you're picking it, that will have Kedushat Shvi'it, and will have ramifications of how you treat the fruits and the vegetables, whether how you eat them, how you deal with leftovers. But because I'm going to use that term many, many times, you need to know the working definition. Kedushat Shvi'it means that it has sanctity of the seventh year. There are multiple sources for fruits and vegetables during the course of Shemitah some are going to have Kedushat Shvi'it and some won't. Again, because this is a tachlis year, I'm not going to get into definitions of some of these things, but a heter mechira, which is the basic idea of the land, a parcel of land is sold to a non-Jew, and the land is then worked in certain ways that are permitted by the Jew or the non-Jew during that time. Those fruits and vegetables that grow on that land do not have Kedushat Shvi'it. I will just tell you parenthetically, I know it's always a red hot button for some people. Heter mechira, oh, it sounds like it's a hocus pocus, and for some it is definitely a halachic issue, and for some it's not. I will tell you the psak of Rav Aviner is that you absolutely can rely on heter mechira. Again, with details and more information, I'll do that down the road. But you should just know the different types. So besides heter mechira, and like I say, heter mechira does not have Kedushat Shvi'it. There's Otzar Beit Din. Otzar Beit Din is as follows. Again, it took Rav Aviner 45 minutes to explain this past Shabbat. I'm going to do it in 1 minute. The idea, not that because he went to all the machloket and why yes and why no. Otzar Beit Din is basically, I can't pay somebody for fruits and vegetables. You can't do schora, you can't do business with fruits and vegetables that are Kedushat Shvi'it during Shemitah year. So what does the farmer do? He's got stuff that's Kedushat Shvi'it. So Beit Din basically takes over the field. They have their workers, in quotes, and it could be the owner's workers, work the field. The food then is collected by the Beit Din, and it is then distributed to the stores and in smaller quantities. When you pay for it, you buy it, that money is used to pay the workers. It's for paying maskorot, paying salaries. It's for paying salaries. And therefore, you're not paying, it's not schora, it's not business of the actual fruits and vegetables. Again, when it comes to Otzar Beit Din, there are those who say, no, you don't, it's absolutely not. And others who say, absolutely, it's one of the best ways to keep Shemitah. Again, it is an absolutely wonderful way to keep Shemitah, and those items do have Kedushat Shvi'it. So heter mechira, no Kedushat Shvi'it. Otzar Beit Din, Kedushat Shvi'it. In addition to that, something called matzah menutak, or detached bedding. Let's assume for a moment you have a greenhouse. We're going to come to what you grow in your house, probably next on Wednesday, Bezrat Hashem. But let's say someone has a greenhouse and they have slabs of stone or something else upon which they are growing their potted vegetables or even maybe small trees of fruit, and they're not connected to the ground in any way. There's no hole in the bottom of that pot, so there's no direct connection, and it's under a cover because it's a hothouse. Those do not have Kedushat Shvi'it at all, and you could do whatever you want. You can plant little seeds and do things like that. Those, again, no Kedushat Shvi'it, and food that comes from Chutz La'aretz. If I'm not mistaken, a lot of our carrots come from Italy, if I'm not mistaken, and those would not have Kedushat Shvi'it. By the way, how are you supposed to know? So, sorry?
Go to Osherad,
Go,
everything is clear.
right. So go to Osherad. Mickey's Makolit also locally. He keeps it separate. You'll see he has signs. What's Kedushat Shvit? What's Heter Mechira? What's Yevul Chutz Laaretz? What's the produce of Chutz Laaretz? And you'll be able to know from that. So where does that leave us with Kedushat Shvit? I just told you 3 out of these things that don't even have Kedushat Shvit. Whether it's your garden, which you grow in your own backyard, whether it is something that is just grown in a field that has been picked in a mutar way, that is not heter mechira, will have kedushat shvi'it, and how we deal with those foods we're going to see momentarily. One major difference between fruits and vegetables as to when they acquire kedushat shvi'it has to do with timing. I mentioned very briefly before, and I'll say it now slowly. Vegetables become kedushat shvi'it no matter when even they're planted now. When they're picked the day after Rosh Hashanah, they're picked in the Shemitah year, they have kedushat shvi'it. Now you can't plant vegetables in the Shemitah year, at least not in normal circumstances, in almost any circumstance. So any vegetable from the time you buy it after Rosh Hashanah, assuming it wasn't there before Rosh Hashanah, but it was picked after Rosh Hashanah, or you go in your garden again and you pick something off your, not your tree, but the growth in the ground, whether it's a growing potato, I don't know if grow potatoes, but whatever you might be growing, it takes on kedushat shvi'it at that moment. Fruit is based on when it's called chanata. Chanata is basically the early blossoming and early stage of the fruit. So that things that are growing on your trees right now, clementines and oranges and whatever else you might have growing, are all what's called Yevul Shana Hashishit. They're all 6th-year produce. So when they come to maturity in Tafshin Pei Bet, they will not have Kedushat Shvi'it. It's still 6th-year produce. Do whatever you want with it. They have to have Trumot Masrot taken from it, which is, we're going to talk about that when it comes to Kedushat Shvi'it, the difference. But all the fruits that you're going to have for the first few months of the year, I can't say few, but the first number of months do not have Kedushat Shvi'it. Now, how do you know when something does? Not just when Osher Ad or Mickey's has it marked, but you'll see in this, one of the things I'll send out Bezrat Hashem on a WhatsApp group, charts that you'll get that say basically approximately when the new fruits or the new crop is now considered in the market, and now it has Kedushat Shvi'it. Very important to make that distinction, so that you cannot buy a tomato, for example, if it was from Israel. You can't buy a tomato, say 3 weeks after Rosh Hashanah, and say it is, and it grew in Israel, and there was no heter mechira. Oh, it's last year's produce. It doesn't work that way. The only way it would work that way is if it was already picked before Rosh Hashanah, was sitting in someone's place, and now it's not going to be storage. It's not going to be. Okay, now, tachlis. We're going to look at Shemitah in the kitchen. We're going to look at it first after the food preparation, and then we're going to go back and talk about the actual food preparation. Here are where the ramifications of something being Kedushat Shvi'it become critical. I already mentioned that eating Kedushat Shvi'it, according to many, is a mitzvah. Others say it's no mitzvah, it's a nice thing to do. I'm of the opinion that anything you can do to make your connection to the land of Israel stronger, you should do. Mitzvah or no mitzvah, whether it's the right of the Rabbanan or just a good thing, eat Kedushat Shvi'it, but be an informed consumer, what you're supposed to do. Number one, you must try your best to eat all the fruit or all the vegetable. You can't take a half an apple, eat an apple that has Kedushat Shvi'it and toss it. You have to finish it off within reason. Does not mean you have to eat it down to the seeds, but to eat it as much as possible, the fruit or the vegetable must be consumed. What about leftovers? I mean, tachlis, you don't necessarily eat everything. So with leftovers, you have 2 choices. Number one, you wrap it and toss it in the regular garbage. That's an option. But the other option, which is not a requirement, but a lot better as far as I personally am concerned, and this is how I teach people based on what I've learned and seen my own self, is you have, and I know some of you still have from last Shemitah cycle, you have a pach Shmita. You have a little can, pei chet, shin mem yud tet he, pach pei chet, a pach Shmita, a little can or a little container in which you're going to put your leftovers. And what happens? You put the leftovers in. You have an apple, you didn't finish it. You have a banana, you didn't finish it. We'll talk about the peelings and all in a minute. You don't want to finish it, okay? You're full. It's going to go to waste. You don't want to throw it in the garbage. It's Shemitah. It's Kedushat Shvit. You wrap it. You put it into the pach. You put it in the pach itself. And after a couple of days, it starts to disintegrate, and then you can just throw it out. What happens when you have more stuff you want to put in there? Well, if you take newer leftovers and put it onto older leftovers, it's going to cause both of them to start to disintegrate faster, right? So you can't do that. You cannot cause Kedushat Shvit fruit or vegetables to disintegrate faster. So you put something between them, or you wrap them in a bag also and put it inside your pach Shemitah. And then every couple of days, you can just take out what is in the bottom and toss it. You can rely on the method, just wrap it and throw it in the garbage. You can. I don't advocate that. It's not a psak. It's my own personal opinion, my own personal approach, that I think that we need to not only talk a good game about Kedushat Shvit, but we need to relate to the fruit and the vegetables in the proper way. If you have a mixture of Shemitah and Kedushat Shvit and non-Kedushat Shvit, let's say, for example, you're making a cholent. You just happen to have Kedushat Shvit wine, and you pour that Kedushat Shvit wine into the cholent. And by the way, if you have the Kedushat Shvit wine sitting around 3 years after Shemitah, it's still Kedushat Shvit. There's one thing you have to do, which we're going to talk about the very last topic on Wednesday. But you have it, and you pour it into your cholent. Your cholent is Kedushat Shvit. Once it's not butter, it's not like nullified. So if you have onions that are Kedushat Shvit, and you make a salad, or you make something, you cook something, a quiche, and you put them in there, and everything else is heter mechira, has nothing to do with Shemitah whatsoever. Everything takes on the level of Kedushat Shvit, and therefore you have to treat those items the same way. But now you're cleaning the plates, you're washing up, you're cleaning up after the meal, and you have leftovers, you have pieces stuck to the plate. It does not mean you have to give it to lick it off the plate, chas v'shalom. You can use whatever the normal little amounts of food that might be left behind when you have eaten, that can actually just be tossed right in the garbage. It does not have to go into a pach Shemitah. You can, but it doesn't have to be. It does not need to be whistle clean, or whatever the expression is, before you put the plate or the food away. How do you treat the food itself? What does that mean? Let's say for a moment, for whatever reason, I wanted to take a carrot that has Kedushat Shvit, and I wanted to make a nice design. We're going to have a party. I'll make a nice design and make it into a little sword. I can't do that. The Shemitah produce, Kedushat Shvit produce, can only be used in a normal way of eating. What does that mean? Let's assume for a moment this is the Shemitah of 40 years ago, and you wanted to juice a carrot. Wait, how many of you like mushrooms? You can leave. I once someone asked me once what bracha you make on mushrooms. I said Baruch Dayan Emet. Anyways, sorry, I just don't like mushrooms. It's very, I like most foods, but anyways, so you can use it. 40 years ago, if juicing carrots was not normal, you wouldn't have been allowed to juice it. Nowadays, juicing is very common, right? So you're allowed to juice the carrots. Whereas if I want to make it into a sword because I want to make another design, so this, by the way, if someone's a caterer or is food preparation or does parties, it's also very important to know that you cannot take food and use it for something that's not food, right? You can't make a design out of it. It has to be food. Even if you eat it, it's considered a diminution of the kedusha of that particular item. That's correct. In addition to that, when you have Kedushat Shvit wine, many people, what they'll do for Havdalah is they'll use the wine to put out the candle, right? You can't do that with Kedushat Shvit wine because you're supposed to drink the wine. I will tell you, there's an expression in the Gemara, "B'didi have uvda," which literally means in Aramaic, the fact happened with me. I was invited, my wife and I and my girls were invited the first Rosh Hashanah we moved here 12 years ago to Rav Avinir's home. It happened to have been the tail end of a Shemitah year. He had Kedushat Shvit wine. Now, what did I know from Shemitah? What did I know from Kedushat Shvit? So he finished making Kiddush and he started pouring. And after he finished, he spilled the kos by accident. And he goes, "Oi, Kedushat Shvit." And he takes a spoon, he's getting it all up into his kos. I think to myself, like, what's the deal? It's mine. What did I know? Right? So he explained. I asked him, he said, Kedushat Shvit, you can't waste it. If it spills, I mean, if it spills on the floor, it spills on the floor. But it was on plastic. So it was recoverable. Right? So you cannot waste Kedushat Shvit produce, including wine as well. On the sheet you'll be given, again, towards the end, you'll have guidelines. The things that you'll see, I think there's 3 that are typed up. This I had from last Shemitah cycle, are translations of things Rav Aviner sent out last time. And it's just with a couple of typos that I found over the last year, been fixed. Well, it'll have the guidelines of how to treat Shemitah produce, the Kedushat Shvi'it produce. So hang in there. What about in the kitchen itself? Meaning before, during, and preparation of food. Okay, I already mentioned you can't use food in an inferior way. If you have a dog, you cannot give your dog Kedushat Shvi'it leftovers. You cannot give them regular Kedushat Shvi'it. You cannot give them leftovers of Kedushat Shvi'it. Rather, it should go in the pach, wrapped properly. And I already said you can't use it in an unusual way. What would be an unusual manner? Again, if you decided to cook something, that's not, I mean, I don't know why this pops in my head, but I assume you don't ever cook watermelon, right? That would be like weird. Hung? Okay, yeah. Looking at caterers and saying, oh, what are you talking about? Don't just instead tell me don't go into catering. Or maybe go into catering and then they'll have more business. So if you were to take, for some reason, boil a watermelon, which sounds gross, you couldn't do that because even though you're cooking it and you might even eat it, it's not the normal way that food is eaten. It is time sensitive, which means that something that our great-great-grandparents might not have done had there been Shemitah in their time period that we might be able to do. Now, I'll give you a great example of the opposite. It has nothing to do with this. If you take a raw potato today, forget Shemitah or anything, just take a raw potato and you decide you're going to eat it as is, you make a shahakol. You don't make an adama because it's not the normal way of eating it. It's also not a finished product because most people either cook it or boil it or bake it or what they might do. But chas v'chalila, back in the time when there was starvation and that was all they had, maybe potato peels, even if they were lucky in some cases, they may have had, I don't know, I never really looked at it, they may have been able to make a barei priyadama because that was the way it was being consumed at that time period. But so Shemitah works like that. Something that is normally done now is the gold standard for today, not what was done 100 years ago. By the way, I wanted to publicly thank Adam Berger. Adam had sent me a shiur, and I listened to the whole thing, I forgot to tell you, on the whole issue of Otzar Beit Din. And the different issues is brilliant Rav who did the shiur. It's the last Shemitah cycle, right? So thank you for that. It was good. It helped me get a little bit more educated, which again, when it's non-tachlis questions after tonight, after Wednesday, I'm happy to get a little bit more into that when you have the questions. If you have a fruit that the fruit itself has a spoiled section, or the vegetable, you have a tomato, part is no good, you may cut that off and toss it. That can just be tossed into the garbage. But if you want to put it in the pach, Shemitah, that's even better. But you don't have to be so careful to get a super sharp knife to get just that spot. It's okay if you take a little bit more of the fruit. You cannot use Kedushat Shvi'it to clean, what does that mean? Let's say, for example, you did work with onions and now you want to get, some people take a lemon and put it on their hands, right? Or to clean a board, a grill. Grill might be a possibility to use it because you really do end up using it as food possibly. But if you want to clean your hands, you can't do that. You have to use it. It's le'ochla. The purpose of Kedushat Shvi'it is to be eaten, not to be consumed, but eaten, even though they have the same meaning, but not in this particular case. Peels. Let's say you have an orange. If you have an orange and you have a banana, the peel will have a different rule. Because banana peels are not edible, people generally, hopefully, and I say that for real because sometimes you never know what, God forbid, a person's situation is, but generally people don't eat banana peels. That is garbage. It is not Kedushat Shvi'it whatsoever, even though the banana itself inside would be Kedushat Shvi'it. On the other hand, the orange, which is used, the zesting of the orange, you're surprised I know some of these things. I pay attention. Chocolate covered orange, candies, sabra. Yes, if it's a normal way of using it, then yes, you can. But that peel, if it's peeled off, you'd have to put it in the pach or wrap it before you toss it in the regular garbage. So it's a difference in whether the peel is edible or not. If you're not sure, err on the side of caution. Doesn't hurt. One other point I forgot to make earlier, when we're talking about that some especially things that are from Heter Mechira, there is no Kedushat Shvi'it. There is an opinion, and this is how I try in my own home, that you still treat it Ki'ilu, as if it is Kedushat Shvi'it, because it gets you into that mindset where you don't have to say, wait, was this Kedushat Shvi'it or not? You're also starting to understand, I hope, why when it comes to institutional things, when it comes to catering, when it comes to bar mitzvahs, weddings, Bezrat Hashem, when it comes to all these things, hotels, it is impossible to use Kedushat Shvi'it food. Impossible. Why? Because you don't have any control unless you're telling people these are Kedushat Shvi'it peppers and you have to finish them. I don't think most people are going to. I mean, would you ever do something like tell people these are Kedushat Shvi'it, make sure you finish them? Of course not. Okay, so again, tachlis, it's impossible to do something like that because you cannot control it. And they're throwing out, unfortunately, a lot of leftovers, and you can't control that. So it's almost in your home. That's what we're talking about. In your home, someone else's home. That and some things I've already said, so I want to try and cut to the chase here. Good. I can't see what time it says.
30.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Okay, liquid leftovers. Let's say you have cholent, which isn't liquid. It could be liquidy. It could be something, a mix that you made. You made some lemon juice, a lemonade, which you can do. But you have leftover. It wasn't the best. You don't want to use it. You can't just pour it down the drain. You can let it sit out for a few hours. I mean, if you let out the cholent to sit, I mean, if it's a crock pot, it's going to stay hot for a long time anyways. But if you leave it, whether you leave it overnight, you don't want to do that. You can put it in a bag. You can, again, it can be tossed. It doesn't have to go in the pach. It can go right in the garbage, but you can't just dump it. Again, you have to get in that mindset. I know I said it 100 times. I'll probably say it 100 more. There's something special about these fruits and vegetables, and you need to treat them as such.
And the lemonade, how do you wrap that?
You don't wrap it. You can just, once it's already sat to a point where someone wouldn't drink it, a couple of days or so, then you can just pour. You don't leave it in your fridge, right? And by the way, you cannot put something in it to make it grosser faster, because you just said you cannot cause the deterioration of Shemitah produce that has Kedushat Shvi'it. Okay. But you can leave it uncovered, yes, because that's its natural process of deterioration. Correct. Okay. I'm going to take, for what I've said till now, good. I was about to ask to see if there are questions. I'm going to take a couple minutes now, up until this point. If they're only on what we've done so far, please, because if it's stuff coming up, then we'll come back to that. Yeah. And I'll repeat the question for the video. Okay, the banana peels. Right. Okay. So the question about compost, that's actually my note here on the side, then I'll come back to the other questions. You cannot compost in a regular way with Kedushat Shvi'it. You can't just put it in the compost because that is causing its deterioration faster. But I need my phone because I actually have, okay. So let me just, I actually have something here that I wanted to read because I knew that was going to come up. Hold on. I love technology. Okay, now it's the Navi Shiur compost. I even wrote compost. Okay, I'm going to read this to you. This is from Eretz Chemda. Okay, you're all familiar with Eretz Chemda, I hope, and if not, you should be. Rav Carmel Shlita.
Speaking of Eretz Chemda, are you going to talk at all about what they had last time when you got those?
So let me explain. First, I'm going to say the question again for the video. Right. So there is, right. So Judy just asked, am I going to discuss this idea? What it really refers to with Otzar Beit Din, you get these little coupons and you buy in advance, you pay in advance, you go to the store and you pay with your coupon. We're going to see why. I'm going to discuss it when we talk about the concept that's on the list of money and Kedushat Shvi'it. Yeah, we're going to talk about then, Bezrat Hashem Wednesday. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Very good question. The answer is no. You cannot. Yeah. Oh, good. You cannot give Kedushat Shvi'it to a Jew. And yeah, can you give? She asked, can you give Kedushat Shvi'it to a non-Jew? The answer is no.
And it can't be exported.
Right.
Still living in the States like 3 Shemittas ago, and I found in the supermarket, I think there were cherry tomatoes, and I was all excited. I called up my Rabbi Lubian from the OU, and I said, Rabbi Lubian, I got these cherry tomatoes from Israel. How do I do Maser and Truma? He said, Judy, you've got a bigger problem than my son.
That's right.
He said, it's shvi,
Right.
you can't have it, and he told me exactly what to do.
Right. So in a sense, what happens is we're going to come to this also, I think, Wednesday. You can't take Kedushat Shvit food out of Israel. I know I'm going to come back to compost in a minute. You can't take Kedushat Shvit food out of Israel. So if you're going to go on a flight to the United States, for example, or to Greece, wherever you're going to go during Shemitah year and you have Kedushat Shvit food, a little bit, you want to take like a sandwich that has a cucumber in it, that's fine. But you can't bring more than that. You can't bring a bottle of wine. It's Kedushat Shvit, the chutz. And we're going to come back to Trumot de Masot because one thing I didn't tell you is that the Shvi'it food, Kedushat Shvit food, is hefker, and it also does not require Trumot de Masot. But that's its own topic we're going to come to. Let me first finish about compost. I'm going to read this one piece here. It says like this: putting Shemitah produce into a composter will only be permitted in two ways. To wait until the fruit has spoiled on its own so that it is no longer holy, and then put it into the composter. Or number two, to put it into the vessel in a way that will not be considered actively destroying the fruit. Now, what does that mean, not actively destroying the fruit? So I would assume it means that you put a little piece of maybe plastic there, you let it just, so it's the same idea. So you can compost, but you have to let it first go through rikavon, like yeah, right, that word. Yeah.
Actually, just more categorical.
Yeah. Herbs. Okay, great. I'm going to stop you right there. Okay. I'll tell you why. There's going to be part of this, the handout is a list of herbs that not only either do or don't have Kedushat Shvit, and also the topic of what's called bi'ur, which is the very last topic we're going to talk about, hopefully, on Wednesday. Okay. Sure.
Grape juice.
Yes.
It could go for any other juice, right? Orange juice, apple juice.
Any juice. Now, the reason I say specifically grape juice or wine is because those are commercially sold as Kedushat Shvit, but you can make your own grape juice. I mean, apple juice.
If it's the oranges are from here,
then it's definitely, depending when they grew, then yes, if they weren't heter mechira. Correct. And it would have to say, if you, by the way, if anyone ever gives you a bottle of wine, even now, 10 years from now, a year ago, look at the date. It was 2015. It was bottled. You have to check to see if it has Kedushat Shvit. It's usually marked. It's usually marked really clearly, but you still, it's always good to know. Yeah. Orange peels.
Yes.
Make a what?
I used them and what's the word? Thank you.
Potpourri? No. Okay, the question is, can you save orange peels if they have Kedushat Shvit to be used for potpourri? The answer is no.
But I can have last year.
If it's from Yishishit, if it's this year's oranges?
Last year. I've got them already.
From yeah, if you have stuff now, there's nothing now, other than if you have bottles of wine still from 2015, there's nothing now, fruits and vegetable wise, that has Kedushat Shvit. Correct. I was asked recently, actually, at a Kiddush, about someone had basil growing in their yard. Do they have to rush and make pesto right now before Rosh Hashanah? The answer is no, because it doesn't have Kedushat Shvit. So they can pick it after, they can make pesto out of it. It will have Kedushat Shvit at that point, probably. We'll see when we talk about tavinim, when we talk about spices. Sure, it's okay.
I take the orange and I do whatever I do with it, and the peels I wrap up and put them in the garden.
You can either wrap up. Okay, the question is, if you peel an orange, you eat the orange. Yeah. The peels themselves either can be wrapped and just tossed, even though they have Kedushat Shvit. That was one option. The other is you put them into the pach Shemitah, let them sit there for a couple of days, and then they start to decompose, and then you can just get rid of them then. Yeah, it's just, again, it's one extra step to impart this feeling of Kedusha to something. Correct. Yeah.
I often zest lemons because I use the lemon zest in cooking. Can I do that?
Yes. Yes, you can, because you're actually using it to eat. The whole the rule is, if it's le'ochla, if it's there for eating, if the item you're using is being made into food to be eaten in a normal way of usage. Let's say nobody zested a lemon or oranges, then you couldn't do it. But because it is a common thing to do, then that would be okay. Okay, and then let's say the rind that's left, you can, again, that's like a bit of leftover that you can just wrap and get rid of. Okay, yeah.
So let's say I want to make some cookies, and I have orange zest or lemon zest or whatever from Kedushat. But then I made a lot of cookies, so I want to freeze them. Can I do that?
Can you freeze
Kedushat Shvit? For like later.
You want to freeze the lemon zest, or you want to freeze the cookies?
The cookies.
Okay, so if you have food that has kedushat shvit because the lemon, let's say, had kedushat shvit to it, those remain kedushat shvit, whether you take them out of the freezer in a week or in a year.
But I thought you had to use up your produce within a few days.
Okay, no.
So
Okay,
now that I have
Susie
these
said that
kedushat
she
shvit-
thought that you have to use up the kedushat shvit within a few days. You're possibly being confused with the topic that's the last thing on the list called bi'ur. Okay, bi'ur is something we're going to talk about because it's much late. Matter of fact, the reason it's the last thing is if I don't get to it, I'm going to make a video about it and just send it out. Okay, because it doesn't even start until mid to late next year. Okay, because it doesn't have anything to do with us yet. Okay, the basic idea being that at a certain point, certain things you have in your house that have kedushat shvit, at a certain point, which I'm not going to explain now, you have to be mafkir. You have to take them out of your house, say they're hefker, and then you can take them back in. Okay, it sounds like a game, but I'm taking something that's going to take me 10 minutes to explain into it in 10
I just
seconds.
want to clarify. I
Sure.
remember other previous Shemittas that if I want to buy a bunch of tomatoes,
Yes.
I have to only buy enough.
Oh,
for
that's
like
a different
couple of
story.
days. So,
Right, that's a different. Okay,
so
now
here
you're
I am
talking
with
something
my
different.
Orange zest and the
Okay.
cookies that are going to last
Okay.
me more than a couple of days.
Fine. Now I'll address that. Let me repeat the question and then I'll explain. Okay. Susie mentioned that she does remember from last Shemitah that you can't take a lot of something. We're going to talk about that when we talk about Shemitah in the garden, which is going to be maybe still tonight. But I'll address this one question now. I mentioned earlier that you're not allowed to do business schora with Shemitah produce. Not only can you not do business with Shemitah produce, you're also not allowed to show as if you're doing business or show what's called ba'alut or ownership. So if I go into my backyard and I take 4 pomelos, that's fine. Or you want to come into my backyard because it's hefker. You don't even need my permission. Just make sure my gun's not loaded. I don't have a gun, but in my head I do. And you want to take, 4 clementines, it's fine. But if you want to come with a big basket, or I want to go in my backyard and take 15 pomelos and 12 lemons, I can't do that because that looks already like you're going to be selling them, doing business with them, even if I'm not going to sell them, makes no difference. So I have to take smaller amounts. I could take 4, I could take 5. What's reasonable for 3 meals is the standard. So then I could come back and get more later. So that's, I think, maybe where the source of the confusion. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Do you have a question? No? Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I do. So you were talking about spilling wine grape juice at Havdalah.
Yes.
You mentioned specifically putting out the candle, but I presume that it's any spillage.
Yes.
That would also
Even
apply to
though,
Leila Seder.
right. Like, Leila Seder, very good. So Leila Seder, when the custom is to take out a little bit of the wine, right? It's best not to use kedushat shvit for that. Theoretically, you can take it out if you can put it back in, if you want to do that. Okay, but it would not be appropriate to use for that. That's correct. I'll take a couple more questions. Yeah.
So talk about doing business.
Yes.
What if we use, I guess we shouldn't use the
For catering, I would say that using kedushat shvi'it food, you're basically causing a michshol. You're causing people to make a mistake when it comes to Shemitah. So it'll be for your own personal use. Right, exactly. That's fine. Okay. And yeah. A couple of questions related to liquids. Yes. I thought you said liquor. No, it doesn't have to get to that bad. You can just pour it down the drain in theory, but it doesn't have to wait. Let me just tell you, if you have a liquid like lemonade that you don't want for whatever reason, it's left over, you don't have to wait till it gets moldy and things floating on top. Just to let it sit out for a day. That's all. Yes. Right. Great question. Great question. So I've seen 2 answers to that. The question was, what happens if you boil some vegetables? They're kedushat shvit. Now, what is the water have kedushat shvit? So the answer is yes. I would just let it sit, cool down, and unless you're planning on drinking the water, you can just pour it out.
Freeze it.
Okay, you could freeze it for stock, for soup.
Okay?
That's all. That's okay but you have to remember, if you put something in the freezer that has kedushat shvit, I highly recommend mark it. Kufshin, kedushat shvit, skull and crossbone, whatever you want to remind yourself that it is kedushat shvit. Okay. Yes, liquid can definitely be kedushat shvit. There's no question. Yeah. So, like I say, you take a thing of water and you squeeze lemon into it because you want lemon flavored water, and that lemon is Kedushat Shvi'it, your water is Kedushat Shvi'it now. Okay? And again, my own personal request, please don't ever say it's a problem of Kedushat Shvi'it, because it's not a problem. That's like saying, oh, it's a problem of Shabbat. Boer isn't Isur on Shabbat. You can't do it. But it's not a problem. It's halacha. That's the way it is. Like, oh, I have the problem with tefillin tomorrow morning. Right? So you got to be careful how we use the words we use. Okay. So here's what I want to do. I am going to, because the next two topics which go together are at least 20 minutes, at least. And I don't want to shortchange it. I'm going to ask my lovely assistant to pass out some sheets. And actually, if you could give me one, please. Then I'm going to explain what's here, because not everything have we discussed yet. Okay, but I would like for you, if you don't mind. Oh, it's just a plain empty box that was holding my books, which are where? Oh, there. I took them off. Yeah. No, now they're on the table. They're on the table. So I was going to say, hold on to these sheets, please. I only printed out X amount. I don't know how many, 50 of them or 50 sets or so. So bring them with you, please, Wednesday, or just leave them at home. It's okay. It's not like a test. You know, I told you about the final and the quiz and all that. It's a Bagrut level class, by the way. It's Chamesh Yechidot. Oh, man. Okay. So just you'll see, you're going to get it in a minute. But on the front page is just the title of what this is. The first two pages are the basic principles of flower pots and planters in Shemitah, which we did not touch yet. Okay, so feel free to read it, and you'll be a little bit already on board for Wednesday night if you want, or just leave it for Wednesday. The next page, which I guess will be page 3, are various guidelines for vegetables and fruits that have Kedushat Shvi'it, which we did talk about tonight. On the next page, you'll see a list of interesting miscellaneous questions that Rav Aviner had sent out that he asked me to translate back when, which is what is here. Then on the last couple pages, I'm not going to explain the whole thing tonight. This has to do with that topic of what's called Bi'ur or Kedushat Shvi'it and Sfichin. These are two more big topics. Yeah, this page that says in Hebrew, HaTorah Ha'aretz. It has a list of all different types of tavlinim, of spices, whether they have Kedushat Shvi'it or not, whether they're subject to Bi'ur or not, whether they're subject to Sfichin. Again, these are terms I haven't explained yet. So if you want, bring it with you again on Wednesday night. Hopefully I'll get to it. What I do want to mention is that the goal on Wednesday is to get through the gardening prior and during Shemitah, the potted plants and flowers, things that have Kedushat Shvi'it. I'm going to try the last few. If I have to leave off something, it will be Sfichin and Bi'ur, because they don't apply early in Shemitah. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll make a video of it as if it was a class. I don't want people have to come again, and I'll just send it out. Tonight's Shiur and Wednesday night Shiur won't be uploaded to YouTube until I'm finished with both of them. Bezrat Hashem. So I want to conclude with a couple of comments. I know I'm finishing early. I understand that, but if I start the next topic, we're going to go run late at it, and I'm very mindful of people's time. We're going to also daven Marav Bezrat Hashem when we're finished. We have, this is the pontificating rabbi part of me at the moment. We have an opportunity that really comes around literally once every actually a little less than 7 years, but about every 7 years. I say less because remember, we have food, like for example, olives only take on Kedushat Shvi'it in Elul next year. Okay, because the olives are going to start coming, are already starting to come out. And Elul this year, they're going to be prime, ready time for picking, at least in this area of the country. So what olives you have now are from Shana Shishit, the 6th year. So it's not until the following Elul that you're going to have olives that are going to have Kedushat Shvi'it, right? So it really continues for quite a while. So that's why I say the gap between Shemitah to Shemitah is not a full 7 years. I'm sorry? Like, right, exactly. So that's true. That's correct.
I call them like vegetables.
What's that?
They're like vegetables.
Like vegetables?
No, etrogim.
Are like vegetables.
As opposed to all fruits are
correct.
Vegetables.
That's right. We're going to talk about what happens when we won't have it this year, but the following year you're going to end up having etrogim that are going to have Kedushat Shvi'it, not the sukkot.
But etrog can also be on the tree for a couple of years.
For more than a couple of years, yeah.
That's the problem.
Definitely, that's part of the problem. By the way, I will mention something.
That's a challenge. That's
okay, there's something I want to mention. I'm going to, if I don't mention this now because I don't have it written down, I will forget it. So I'm going to say it now. Let's assume you have a lemon tree. That's one of the things we have, a lemon tree, right? It took me years to remember that was the lemon, that was the clementine. Okay, a lemon tree. I asked Rav Aviner a question, and it didn't have to do with Shemitah, but it applies with the Shemitah question as well. They tend to have, I don't know if it's true for all lemon trees, but they potentially can have two crops, right? So you have a series of lemons, you'll finish them off, and then you have another set of lemons. It has two ramifications. One has to do with Shemitah, because, wait, are they 6th year or 7th year? Or are they 8th year? The other has to do with Trumot Masrot, Orla, other things. So if you have a tree like a lemon tree, and you have 6, 7 lemons left on it, and the others start flowering already, it's going to happen soon, pick them. Don't get them confused. Don't get them mixed up. There is one thing I mentioned really quickly. I realized, and I'm going to go back to it again. Kedushat Shvi'it food, fruits and vegetables, are hefker. They are ownerless. They do not require the person's permission to take them off of someone's tree. If they have a tree that's growing, if you were growing something in your backyard, and I said, oh, I need a clementine, I can pick it. I don't need your permission, because if you give me permission, you're showing ownership. You're not allowed to show ownership. And, so very good. So we're going to talk next time also, but a very common activity that people have is if they have trees that are easily accessible in the public, they put a sign that says Hefker. Okay. Secondly, because they're Hefker, there's no Trumot Masrot. Pick it and you can eat it. Well, wash it first, but you can pick it and eat it. You don't have to take Trumot Masrot, and you don't even have to take it without a bracha. You don't take it, because if you even if you bring it in the house, it doesn't require. What she's asking is based on when does even a regular year, non-Shemitah, when does the requirement to take Trumot Masrot occur? If it's outside in an open field, not shamur, it's not protected in theory. No, to get to my backyard, you have to go through my house or climb up the ladder and go over the fence. So that may still be considered shamur, and therefore, even if I pick it in my backyard, I may still have to take Trumot Masrot. Once you bring food into the house, again, non-Kedushat Shvi'it fruit and vegetables, that's when the requirement to take Trumot Masrot kicks in. So when it comes to Shemitah produce, Kedushat Shvi'it produce, I should say, it makes no difference if you're out in the field, you're in the backyard, or you take it in your house. You do not take Trumot Masrot, and you should not even say, well, just in case. Because just in case means you don't know if it's Kedushat Shvi'it. So if it's not, now you have a big safek. Well, not necessarily doraita, because nowadays, but you have sfekot. Okay. I want to close with what I started. I want to thank again Rivka, Michael, the whole family for opening up their yard. Again, thank you. We'll daven Marif now, Bezrat Hashem. Again, I know there'll be questions. You can message me questions, but I really would prefer let's wait until after Wednesday night, and then if there are any more questions, we'll do it then. WhatsApp is always the easiest.
No, I need to get onto that new WhatsApp.
Yeah, I don't have next week, not next week, Wednesday. By then I'll probably I'll pass out a sheet or something to say, have people sign up the old fashioned way. Okay. So thank you very much for being here this evening. And we'll daven Marib in a couple minutes. Okay. And seriously, if anyone's interested in buying 20 books or just one book, let me know. I have them here.
There?
Yes.
The overlapping lemon crops is a lot more serious than, it's